Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We are buzzing as always. And folks, it's good to be back. It's fun to be building and to be in the space again. I mean, it's always been fun, but doing pods in a bear market, little different than doing pods in a face-melting bull market. And it's good to be back, baby. Time for the intro. Today we have Paul Frambot, the co-founder and CEO of Morpho Labs, a research and development company responsible for building and growing the Morpho protocol. Paul co-founded Morpho whilst studying towards his now completed master's in parallel and distributed systems from the Institut Polytechnique de Paris in 2021. During his studies, Paul raised 18 mil from top-notch investors, including A16Z and Variant for Morpho. That is absolutely bananas, raising money while studying, which has since grown into a multi-billion-dollar lending protocol. The latest version, Morpho Blue, which is absolutely on fire at the moment, is a completely independent but remarkably simple protocol that serves a secure, efficient, and flexible base layer for users and applications. Paul, I've been waiting for this one for a while. Super pumped to have you on, my friend. How's everything in beautiful France?
Yeah, no, everything's all right here in Paris. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about DeFi and about Morpho specifically, but more generally, all the biggest changes that we're witnessing in the space right now.
It's crazy. I can't wait to get into it. Before we do, we have to talk about you raising money while in school. That's bananas. You are going to be episode 318, I believe. We've had 318 folks on the pod. No one has ever raised money while in school building a company. How the hell did you do all these things? You're studying your master's and raising money for a company at the same time. Like, you gotta give me the TLDR. You gotta walk me through the process. Give us the spark notes here. How the heck did you make this happen, Paul?
Right. So that was 2 years ago. So at the time, as you mentioned, I was studying, consensus algorithms and distributed systems in Paris. And, I met a bunch of researchers and interesting people working in the space of DeFi and blockchain. And this is how we came to create the first think tank around DeFi and essentially thinking through what we could improve about the current state of DeFi and more specifically the lending. And so we had a couple of years. At the time, I was in my second year. Some of them looked good. And I was talking to friends in the crypto space, and they had friends that were investors, and they informed me. And this is basically how I made my way into the VC world. And we raised actually a first round of $1 million at the time. So during my second year, with a Nascent and a Semantic, so two of the best crypto native funds at the time that were interested into what we were building. That was really pre-seed. And then with this money, we sort of hired a little bit of people and did the first smart contract audits of the first version. But before launching the version, we had even more interest coming from different funds. And so we raised a much larger round, a few months after, that eventually got led by Andreessen Horowitz and Variant. But we have more than 100 different investors in Morpho. So that's a lot of different angels, funds that joined the party, I would say. And so this was in my third year. So the first round was in my second year. Second round was in my third year. And obviously, we don't have this dropout culture in France that, is more famous in the Silicon Valley, Stanford. And, it's more a meme than a reality, to be frank. I've never personally heard of a founder that, has been very successful dropping out, except maybe Mark Zuckerberg. And so we did not drop out, essentially. We basically went through the whole thing. And finished it at the end of 2022, few months after raising, and one by one, we were the four co-founders. The four co-founders were still at university, and so this is how we sort of finished, and then we grew the team a little bit more to get to where we are at right now with Morpho.
That's incredible. It's still wild to think that you guys, raised that much and even just had the balls to raise money while still in school. Absolutely bananas. Love to see that. Paul, before we jump into Morpho, let's talk about like the current market. Again, folks, we're recording early-ish March. This is going to drop mid-March. The market's on fire right now. Yes, we had a little dip, but everything is looking pretty up and only up and to the right. We love to see this. And DeFi has been, obviously along with the Bitcoin ETF, has been one of the biggest sort of indicators and trends of this 2024 bull run, specifically DeFi 2.0. Paul, you're big on Twitter. I love lurking your Twitter. You are under the impression that DeFi 2.0 will define crypto's upcoming bull market of 2024. I'd love if you could expand on this, and in particular, things like liquid staking, yield farming, and sort of the next evolution of DeFi lending.
So I guess, I was giving a talk with a panel actually with Uniswap and Maker in East Denver actually 3 days ago. And the title of the talk was From App to Infra. This is how DeFi scales, right? And I think this is what DeFi 2.0 looks like, right? So we had, this crazy high risk DeFi 2.0 narrative like 2-3 years ago. That did not end well for a lot of protocols. I think the real next evolution of what DeFi is going to look like is moving from app to infra. So what do I mean by this? The general idea is that the earliest protocols, namely like Maker in the early days, Uniswap v2, Uniswap v3 even, or Aave and Compound are usable as good products. Like they're usable as is. You directly go on chain and interact with them. And it's super easy to use. Like when you go to Aave, you deposit your money. You don't get to think about it, right? They're going to do all the management for you, right?
Super simple.
Yeah, super simple, no complexity. Uniswap v2, super simple. You deposit your money. There is no such thing as like having to do market making in any way. And Maker, like if I made the V1, is just like, okay, you go and mint some DAI. And you're good to go. And so that was the first like iteration of DeFi. And the interesting thing about this approach was that it was super like user friendly, but protocols were self-contained. Like they would do everything at the same time. They would do the protocol and the UX, everything enshrined in one protocol. And what we've witnessed is that Aave or Maker or Uniswap, they want to do more with their protocol. They want to scale, so they want to enable more features. And, one path is let's enshrine all those features in one, monolithic protocol. And so this is, for example, the path that Aave pursued, which is, V3 is integrating more feature than in V2, which itself is integrating more features than what you have on Compound. And, it grows the complexity of the code. I think Aave is now 7,000 lines of code. So you have a bunch of like features, UX features, but also, features around getting fixed rates inside the protocol. So that's great. But at the same time, you're trading on, efficiency and security because you have to handle more lines of code. There is more economic risk because you're trying to list every single asset in the same platform. And yes, you preserve the UX of it, you preserve the product aspect of it, but it does not scale, right? And everybody has been witnessing this over the last 2 years. And the way protocols have been approaching the solution to this problem is by basically doing much less to enable people to build more on top. So let me explain that. If you look at Uniswap v2, it's like a very simple, protocol that's usable as is. Now, Uniswap v4 is incredibly hard to use as is, right? You have hundreds of pools with different hooks built by entire companies building pools on top of Uniswap. If you want to trade on Uniswap before, you don't know which app, which protocol to choose. And so essentially they've built layers, right? So you have Uniswap X that goes on top of Uniswap before that's going to enable a smooth like product in the uniswap.org app, for example. In the case of Maker, Maker now have the concept of sub-DAOs. So they have people building, other products on top of the Maker core protocol. So you have Spark, for example, which is building on top of Maker core. And in the case of Morpho, instead of having one monolithic pool, we break, the pool into two pieces, the risk management part and the protocol part. And so essentially you have the protocol that is very like raw and sort of hard to use in itself because you have to do your own risk management, but you have people building on top, right? And so you cannot get the ideas that protocols are less and less usable as is, yet they enable much more expressiveness for builders to build the great on-chain DeFi products on top. And so this layered approach, instead of having like one monolithic way, we have like more layers of abstraction, exactly the same way internet has been built. Looks like a both scalable, safe, and efficient way of, improving DeFi.
So interesting there. If you could expand a little bit more on the way the internet is built, like what exactly do you mean by that point? Do you just mean how it's like where where for the internet, we have sort of one specific app for, we go to Bank of America for our bank, we go to Facebook and Instagram for friends, we go to Binance for crypto, blah, blah, blah. Like you're talking more in that regard, how there's different layers for sort of every single thing built on one specific ecosystem. Am I getting this right here?
So essentially the internet stack is built in layers where you have like, different layers of abstractions. And when we use the internet, we don't, experience the full complexity of it. We just see like, for example, a browser that's displaying like a front end. But behind the scenes, when you use the HTTP protocol, there is like different layers of abstraction. Like some networking models like to have 7 of those. But it really depends on which protocol you're using. In the case of the internet, it's 7, but you have different layers for email, for example. And the interesting way about those is that they have core and opinionated protocols. Let's say on emails, the protocol is called SMTP, right? And then on top of SMTP, you have different clients that have been built. You have Gmail, you have Hotmail, you have Gmail for France, which is different from Gmail from US, right? Because you have different regulations that are in place, but they share a common ground, a common like communication protocol, which is SMTP. And it feels like this is exactly the way DeFi is going, which is having core communication protocols, core financial protocols that are completely unopinionated, that does not have any opinion about risk. They don't have any opinion about compliance or all those things. But on top, you rebuild like the risk profile that you want, the compliance profile that you want. And essentially, you basically have like all the network being built with one layer after another, having the protocol at the bottom, but then on top you have maybe the risk management layer, and then on top you have the user application, layer. And this way, services get abstracted away for users until we get to like removing the non-custodial aspects, such that users don't have to think about their wallets, the cross-chain abstraction, the gas abstraction, etc., etc. So really a pile of abstractions, essentially.
Well said. Makes total sense there. I'd love to keep buzzing on DeFi 2.0 and how you think it will define sort of crypto's sort of present and coming bull market. Last bull market we had, it was pretty much DeFi that killed us, I would say. In a couple different ways. We haven't seen too many greasy instances of DeFi really crushing the market right now. There's a couple protocols that have some extremely high, sort of absurd yields at the moment. And hopefully these are sustainable moving forward so this doesn't hurt the market. But why DeFi in particular, Paul? Why do you think DeFi 2.0 will sort of be that catalyst that gets us over the hump, helps us achieve mass adoption, and is sort of the defining moment in crypto's upcoming bull market?
Right. So I guess, it's worth mentioning that indeed, DeFi 1.0 and some of the protocols that were hacked or, like really pushed the limit a bit too far, ended up exploding. And that has caused a lot of problems. We had the number of hacks that we had in 2023 and 22 is like incredible. I think we are still orders of magnitude away in terms of safety of what's required to build an open and, permissionless like financial system. And what we're looking to build here is infrastructure for rails on top of which all the financial flows of humanity will basically, be handled. And so right now with the current security practices that we have, this is not imaginable, right? The advantage of this DeFi 2.0 is that it segregates complexity in layers. And you don't have to enshrine complexity in one monolithic pool, which is dangerous, right? Because we're orders of magnitude away from like what's the security standard should be. I think this layered approach, enables protocols to be completely immutable extremely simple. Like if you think of Morpho Blue, for example, it's only 600 lines of code. The only thing it does really is lending and borrowing of tokens. There's nothing, there's no feature, no risk management. Everything is externalized to above layers, right? And then layers on top can customize. They can have the risk they want. Maybe some will blow up. Some will remain forever. We don't know. But the protocol does not have an opinion about all those things. It's just made to be here forever. That's the first part of the answer. And this first part is, okay, how this DeFi 2.0 is safer and it will, not blow up the same way the first paradigm actually blew up. Now, the second reason why this DeFi 2.0 is interesting is that it's going to scale much more. If you take, for example, Uniswap before, it's so general that you can rebuild Uniswap v3 in it, but you could build a wide variety of different dexes with different compliances, with different, efficiency. You have mechanisms that basically can become very competitive with the efficiency of traditional FX markets, right? With having like oracles built in that really remove toxic order flows. The design space is huge, right? And so Uniswap v4 is clearly, because it's even more general than previous iteration, it has the potential to have a network that is much bigger than what DeFi is currently. So it's really like, making the pie bigger, which is something we've always had a problem with in DeFi. Like DeFi really is a protocol that is mostly, DeFi protocols are mostly for crypto users within crypto, for high net worth individual, for DeFi funds, etc. And we've been having troubles breaking out of this circle, right? And I think the approach I'm describing is such a neat way of progressively forcing the boundaries of that space.
Very interesting. I mean, yeah, I love your tweet storm, not so much tweet storm, but you had a tweet a couple of days ago that goes as follows: Morpho does one job, lending. That is it. No risk management, features, stablecoin, DEX. Contributors have one incentive, the Morpho token, no equity, advisory, investment. And Morpho's value is tight to one thing, Morpho's network. No fees on risk management, maintenance, and app. This is a very rare approach to take in today's day and age where everyone is trying to sort of stretch themselves in a multitude of different directions. You guys are literally just focused on lending and borrowing and making it the most simplistic, efficient, hopefully money-making protocol possible. And it's quite refreshing. Was that always the goal, Paul? Or like, did you guys ever think about doing any point systems, airdrops, stable coins, blah, blah, blah? Or was this from day one, just like, we're just going to do our bread and butter and we're going to do it really freaking well?
Right. So yeah, like I think that's part of like the, company's culture and how we've been thinking about it is like being laser focused at doing one thing and do it extremely well. And to be frank, we don't do much. We do like very few, we take very few, like very targeted, concentrated bets on, our design choices and how we approach things. And we don't spread. And this, in my opinion, is crucial in DeFi because there is a lot of like opportunities. There is as a founder, you get very often the opportunity to advise many projects, to invest in many projects. The co-founders of Morpho don't have the right to invest or advise any project. We have a contract together. We're not allowed to basically like, spread. We have to be focused on Morpho. And I think this has given us like a quite unique approach to like DeFi lending in general. We've always been like approaching things very differently from the rest of the space. The first version that we built that now has like more than $2 billion in deposits was like never seen before in the space and not even close to look like another protocol. And I think the new version, Morpho Blue, to a very different regard, is also extremely different from what people have been used to in the DeFi space. Taking such a minimalistic approach is goes against the trend of like building of DeFi 1.0 trend, which is like building and entraining as much features as we can to be able to do more and more. So yeah, that's always been like a part of the culture. It's the hard path sometimes. Like it's not, as tasteful as if we could do like a bunch of different things. But I think in the long term, that's definitely a winning strategy.
I love it. Paul, we got to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show, Prime XPT. And when we get back, we're going to jump into DAOs a little bit, keep talking about Morpho, of course, and the huge news of Gauntlet joining Morpho. Until then, huge shout out to Prime XPT, longtime friends of cryptonews.com and longtime friends of the Crypto News podcast. Prime XPT offers a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XPT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50. That's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Paul, let's jump right into the Gauntlet story, which happened not too long ago on the 21st of February. Gauntlet announced they had halted their journey with Aave and jumped to the Morpho ship. This was, a massive piece of news, and sort of, I don't love to go over beef on the podcast. But, this move also comes in the heels of a little bit of growing tension between you guys, as you guys are, the biggest, some of the biggest DeFi protocols in the space. And Aave is attempting to prevent your guys' growth by introducing Merit, which is a rewards program. I would love if you could jump into this. And if you don't want to, totally understand. But if you want to get into the beef, that would be a treat. Let's put some salt on it, throw it on the grill, and let's get a little spicy.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm happy to give more color to what has been happening over the past, weeks, but also like in more general, like how the relationship has been going, etc. So essentially, Morpho Optimizer, our first lending protocol, is built on top of Aave and Compound, right? So essentially, it's enabling users of Aave to get an extra boost of efficiency by matching themselves peer to peer with lenders and borrowers, right? And so that's interesting because it enables new rates that are not possible on Aave and attracts new, lenders and borrowers that would not have gone otherwise on Aave through Morpho, and essentially end up being on Aave, right? So in that sense, that's super positive for Aave. In the other way, we have been also like matching users of Aave directly peer-to-peer, which has been removing some order flow from the Aave protocol. So it's a balance. There is Morpho Optimizer has been bringing a lot actually to Aave. Actually, I think we've generated more than $8 million of interest to the Aave protocol. But at the same time, it has to be transparent that the Morpho protocol has also removed some Aave users and has taken some market shares for sure from the Aave lending pool. And so, soon after this, after Morpho Optimizer, we announced Morpho Blue, which is a general primitive on top of which you can rebuild pretty much any lending and borrowing engine, such as Aave V3. And, a few weeks in this, Aave DAO introduced what they call the Merit Reward Program, which essentially is targeting, their competitors, namely Maker, Morpho Optimizer, and Morpho Blue, to basically get extra rewards if they go to the Aave platform, which is interesting because this has never been done on Compounds. Aave has been competing with Compound for 6 years. Compound is also used to be very large at some point. Now we actually are bigger than them in terms of borrowing volume. But yeah, and so during 6 years, I never done it for Compound, but Morpho Blue, which at the time was, I think, 2 weeks old or 3 weeks old, it was targeted by Merits. So it kind of told a lot about how Aave is thinking about Morpho. And so, yeah, that's the story. To be frank, we stopped here. It's their absolute right to compete. We have our own, strategy. With this regard, which is not based on throwing cash at users, but more focused on tech and essentially growing Morpho without really focusing on other protocols at all. And so part of growing Morpho and Morpho Blue is having many people building on top of us, right? So right now we have, so essentially like Morpho Blue externalizes risk management. So it does much less than Aave to be able to enable much more. And so on top of Morpho Blue, you can, have what we call metamorpho vaults, which essentially risk experts can build, their own product on top of Morpho Blue. And so in the case of, at the launch of Morpho, we had Block Analytica, Stakehouse Financial, Blue Protocol, RiskDAO, RE7, all building vaults on top of Morpho Blue, but we did not have Gauntlet, which, Gauntlet is one of the most trusted risk experts in the world, in the world of crypto. And we really wanted to work with them, right? But the thing is that, they were not really allowed to work with us, right? Every time we tried to reach out to them, well, they were like, okay, Aave would not want us to work with you. So this is not possible. And then, Aave published the merit program, and, you could look through everything is public. Like anyone can, have their own opinion on the Aave forum. And so, we essentially at some point, Gauntlet decided to leave Aave, because they were not aligned anymore with how the DAO is working and behaving with them. And they figured that the Morpho opportunity is actually much more lucrative. So if you look at Aave, Gauntlet was managing $10 billion for 1.6 million, right? If you look at Morpho, to be able to generate the same amount of money, so $1.6 million, Gauntlet only needs 200 million in their vault, right? So for them, that's a 50x improvement, right? In terms of efficiency. And not only this, but it scales for them, right? It's like, if the market goes 10x, well, Gauntlet does not, Gauntlet as service providers do not 10x their fees, right? As consultants for the Aave DAO. However, Gauntlet as builder on top of Morpho, if the market goes 10x, well, they 10x as well, right? In terms of size and fees that they generate. So it's really like a venture backable business of running metamorpho vaults on top of Morpho Blue. And we've been super pumped to be working with Gauntlet. I think they're an extraordinary team. And and I'm excited. They have not been deploying yet on Morpho Blue, but they will be deploying very soon their different vaults, and be working alongside Block Analytica, Stakehouse, and each of them will have their specialty. So on Morpho Blue, you're able to have lending and borrowing on LRTs, real world assets, ETHNA, but also very low risk thing as well, like crypto, blue chip assets like WBTC, WST, ETH. You literally have a platform that is able to list any asset, with each risk manager being able to sort of manage their different lending and borrowing strategies in some sense. So it gives a very wide variety of use cases, while being based on top of one trustless and efficient base protocol of 600 lines of code, right?
Yeah, it's so efficient.
Yeah, that's really great.
Paul, you've been on fire here. A couple more questions, mate, and then we'll wrap up. DAOs, you are one of the few people, and I love this take you have, because I appreciate DAOs for the decentralized aspect of them and sort of removing power from the top layer. But on the flip side, they're just so inefficient right now. You're one of the few people who are in the camp of DAOs are not suited for managing the risk of protocols, as effective risk management demands both expertise and the ability to make quick, lightning fast, efficient decisions, sort of a la Elon Musk type of management, whether we agree that that is correct or incorrect. You got to expand on this point. Again, you've been on the record, DAOs do not suit the role and are not suited for managing the risk of protocols. Why do you feel that's the case?
Right. So that's a good question. In general, what we like to do at Morpho is to embrace truth and try to justify every single design choice. And to be frank, doing risk management is super complex, right? It's very multi-dimensional problems, involves a lot of statistics, math, data, etc., etc. And it's super complex. And in the case of Aave, and Compound as well, but in the case of Aave, you have more than 700 different risk parameters, right? Liquidation incentives, collateral factors, oracles, close factors, supply caps, borrow caps for each asset, for each, market, on each chain, on each version. That's a lot of parameters, right? And essentially, we're asking token holders to vote on a daily basis to improve and basically change and adjust those risk parameters. And so the analogy I have here is that, Aave essentially is a fund, right? And it's risk managed by token holders, right? I don't think token holders, to be frank, token holders could be anybody. I don't think they're the right person to do this job. And I think that's, a truth, right? And I don't think, at the end of the day, they're the most aligned to do this. And I think DAOs and decentralization in general are great, but we should not, we should make sure we do things that truly, really make sense to provide the best possible use cases and experience and safety for users. And so essentially what we have with Morpho Blue is that risk management is completely externalized from the protocol. So everything that's built on top of Morpho Blue can have its own specific risk management. Some can be token-based risk management. Some can be super centralized risk management. Some can be, controlled by users. And it's really like a marketplace for risk management. And we'll see what's the best way of approaching risk management. And in the end, only one approach will, or maybe not. Actually, multiple ones could coexist. So I'm not specifically against, DAO-based risk managers. I strongly don't feel like that's the best thing to do, but we'll see how the market will decide what's the best approach here.
Paul, incredible episode. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time, and just super pumped and happy to see you and the team absolutely crush it. Of course, Morpho Blue absolutely on fire right now, melting faces. We love to see that. Before we let you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you personally and Morpho online and on socials?
Right, sure. So for Morpho, that's going to be morpho.org. And our Twitter handle is Morpho Labs, so MORPHO LABS. And for me, it's just Paul Frambot attached together, so my name and my surname together on Twitter.
I love it. Paul, thank you so much. Incredible episode. Can't wait to have you on for round 2, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Folks, what an episode with Paul Frambot, the co-founder and CEO of Morpho. Him and the team are absolutely on fire right now. Do go check them out, guys. As always, we will include all the links and everything else in the show notes. Huge shout out to Paul's team and my team for making this happen. To listeners, appreciate you guys as always. If you enjoyed this one, please do subscribe. To my team, thank you guys. Love you for everything. Eustace, you are the man. And back to the listeners, love you guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.